Good morning and welcome to Kingdom Youth. I hope you are having a good week and I hope God is really doing stuff in your life in this time of lockdown. Sometimes when lots of things are taken away from us, like the ability to go out and see our friends, or being able to go to shops, or being able to go and play football, actually, these are times for us to think about God and what God is doing in our lives, and to really press in and spend time reading the Bible and learning more about God. So why don't you do that this week? But we're going to continue our series on this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, and how we're going to shine our lights. I wonder if you found opportunities this week to shine your light. We're going to have a game now, and we're going to pop over to Kingdom Kids for that game of Human Bucket.
Jump it, grab it, clap it, spin it, grab it, clap it, jump it, spin it, grab it, clap it, grab it, jump it, spin it, jump it, clap it, jump it, grab it, clap it, grab it, spin it, clap it, grab it, clap it, clap it, jump it, grab it, spin it, clap it, jump it, grab it, clap it, spin it, jump it, jump it, jump it, grab it, clap it, grab it, spin it, clap it, come on, grab it, jump it, clap it, spin it, jump it, spin it, clap it, spin it, jump it, clap it, grab it, clap it, jump it, spin it.
Our story today comes from 2 Kings chapter 6 and 7, which is about King Ben-Hadad from Aram. He was a powerful king, and he decided to do what they call siege a city. Sieging a city is where you camp around it. You don't fight, you just camp and block all exits to the city. So that what happens? Their food runs out, even the water to the city runs out because they can block off the fresh water, and they end up dying through starvation or surrendering to the people. And the king of Samaria got a little bit desperate. There was the man of God. You might remember the story of Elisha, and Elisha was a prophet who told of what was going on and would give words of knowledge of what God was doing in that city. And the king went to Elijah really angry because he believed this was God's doing, and what was God doing here? And well, he was planning to not be very nice to Elisha. Well, when he got there, Elisha said to the king, he said, okay, you think this is bad? Well, by this time next week, a sack of flour will be sold for a shekel. Now, at that time, things were getting really, really expensive because they were getting rare. They were rarer than the toilet roll in coronavirus lockdown. They were so rare to actually get food. People were paying astronomical amounts to get food. So he said a sack of flour will be sold at the gate for a shekel. Now the officer of the king, he turned and said, really, are you sure this is going to happen? That's ludicrous. If this happens, it was as if he said, as if this happens, I'll eat my hat. Basically, it'd be more possible for food to rain from heaven than that to happen. And well, Elisha said a very sad thing to him. He said, you'll see it, but you won't eat any of it. Well, there were some people outside the city who had a skin disease. Lots of people think it was leprosy, so it could be caught. So they had to quarantine themselves outside the city. They had to stay away from people, no matter whether it was under siege or not. They lived in isolation at all times. And, well, they were getting to the point of running out of food as well. And they turned to each other and said, if we go into the city, we'll die. If we stay here, we'll die. Hey, let's just go over to the army camp, to the enemy, and surrender. I'm sure at least they'll give us some food, and then we won't die. Well, they got over to the camp. It was strangely quiet. Nothing going on. They didn't see any people around. They thought, oh, let's look in one of the tents. They looked in one of the tents, and it was full of food, but there was no one there. It looked like someone had just run and left the food. They looked in another tent, and again, there was no one there. What's going on? They looked in another tent, and there was no one there. So they grabbed all this food and took it back to their camp. They grabbed the next tent food and took it back to their camp. They grabbed the third tent food, and then they looked at each other and they said, do you know what? We have good news. We shouldn't keep it to ourselves. Let's tell the city. So they shouted to a guard on the city, there's food in the camp, everyone's gone. Because what had happened was God had made a massive sound in heaven. And this army had thought another army was coming to attack them. So they ran for their lives and just disappeared, leaving their tents and all their food. So the city had enough to eat. But unfortunately, the officer didn't get to eat any of it. Because as the stampede went out of the door, they squashed him. So, all the people were able to eat, and a little bit, a bag of flour was able to sell for a shekel. Now they had good news, didn't they? They had amazing news that there was food, that they shared that food with people. Now we have amazing news. We have amazing news in the Bible. And the best news of all, that Jesus died so that we could spend eternity in heaven. That is news we can tell. That's news we can share with the world. But there's also other good news. When we follow Jesus, life, it doesn't always get easier, but it is more fulfilled. God has plans for our lives. God has things that He wants us to do, that He has plans for us, that we will be fulfilled in, and we'll see what God is doing in our lives. It might be sharing your food with someone who doesn't have so much food. And especially at the moment, there's people that are really struggling for food and money. And we can share what we have with them. We have loads of things that God has given us that we can share. So how did those men shine their light? They shared what they had. They shared the good news they had. They shared the good food that they had. Even though they didn't have as much for themselves by that point, because they had to share it with others. So what can you share this week? How can you share your life, your good news with others? What excites you about Jesus that you can share with others? when we hear about an amazing bargain, especially me, I love bargains. And when I find a bargain, I want to tell everyone about it. And when I find that bargain, people know because I'm excited about it. And we found the most amazing things in Jesus. We found life eternal in heaven. We found amazing joy that we can get in Jesus. And life everlasting. So, this week, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Are you gonna let your light shine to the world about what Jesus is doing in your life?
You know you make me wanna be a better man. So I'm gonna go out and talk to your people. Yes, 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 I'm gonna talk to your people.